Okay, friends, if you're ready, I'm going to get started. This is not a very long class. What you will have seen in your prompts for dialogue is sometimes there's more than one instruction. Please don't be confused or get confused or anything. Everything's optional. Okay. So sometimes the prompt is a single word, then you can use the single word. Sometimes it's a single word and something about adverbs, then you can try and combine both. Sometimes it's a single word, a conversation about body language and using airport announcements, for example. Then you can decide use one of them, use two of them, use all three of them. All right. Your only and easiest goal is to post something every day. All right. Well, preferably something dialogue related. But otherwise, just like I said, make these things as easy or as hard for yourself as possible. And you can use as many of them challenges as you want to. Okay. But mostly just have fun, please. Okay, that's when writing truly good things truly happen is when we're having fun with it. Okay. So I'm very quickly going to go through the punctuation and stuff. It's honestly not the most thrilling class or the most thrilling thing to watch. I do try to make it as exciting as possible, but it is just a whole bunch of commas and question marks and all of those things. So I'm going to go through everything and then I've got a bigger example that I can show you at the end. Okay. Do you guys have any questions about the challenge, about the site, about where to find classes? This recording will go live under the education class. So if you go there now, the education tab, you'll go dialogue 2026. You'll see the short little video clips are there, so you don't have to traipse through the whole 1 hour video. And then the whole class is there as well. And then this education class will go live there as well. Okay, if you want to go take a look, and it will be available for you for the duration of the challenge. All right. Um, I am, excuse me. Um, I'm going to try and present in in Canva today and see what it does because it seems like Zoom does something different every day. So here we go. I'm going to go full screen, and if you need me for any reason or anything, just please raise your hand so that I know that you have a question. Okay, so we're here to talk about punctuation. So as we said, dialogue is one of the fastest way to bring a story to life. It creates tension, reveals character, controls pacing, and keeps readers turning pages. But if dialogue punctuation is confusing, readers stumble. And once a reader stumbles, the magic breaks. The good news, dialogue punctuation follows a handful of simple patterns. Once you learn them, they become automatic. And this class will teach you the rules that most writers use every day. The first thing I need you to keep in mind, which is a little bit frustrating, is that WordPress eats formatting. Okay, that means it doesn't allow us to post in manuscript format or in proper dialogue formatting. You will format your page beautifully in whatever program you use, and when you put it on the website, it just goes whoops and messes everything up again. So kind of ignore what it does on the website, but in your own work on whatever program you're using, please learn how to use manuscript formatting. You are going to make your life so much easier if you master that. So just note the site doesn't allow for a lot of fancy formatting, but what I want you to keep in mind is that dialogue formatting starts with manuscript formatting. Okay. So what manuscript formatting means is you indent your dialogue. You indent your paragraphs. You use double line spacing. You can also use 1.5 if you want to, but check the submission guidelines of the publisher. And then it creates that white space between scenes and chapters. That's what you only have white space between scenes and chapters, not between your paragraphs. And let's quickly dive into dialogue specifics. If you have never worked with manuscript formatting before, if you're unsure of manuscript formatting, on the freebies page on the website, you go freebies, writing resources. I think it's workbooks and resources. Go onto that tab and then you'll see this image. Do you want to know how to format your manuscript? And then you download it. There's a very easy to follow little printout. It's a single A4 page that you can print out and have next to you until you're comfortable with manuscript formatting. Okay, because if you get the manuscript formatting right, the dialogue formatting becomes so much easier. Okay. So the first thing that we have to remember about dialogue is that each speaker gets their own line. Even if it's a word or two, you can go no on a single line and that'll be it. Okay, so take a look at this. You're late, Sarah. I know, Ben replied. The traffic was terrible. So those are all, each one of them on their own line. Speaker one, speaker two, speaker one, speaker two. Okay. So what you don't want is for it to be all in one line. You're late, Sarah said. I know, Ben replied. Okay. That white space helps us to track the speakers, and that taking turns, especially if you don't have tags, lets us know who is speaking. This someone sent it to me after the dialogue class. They said their teacher taught them this at school, and I thought it was quite clever. So it's just very simply always say quotation mark, words spoken, punctuation mark, close quotation marks. Okay, and then whatever needs to happen over there. So the punctuation mark always goes inside the quotation marks. Okay, let's look at a few more examples. Um, Quotation marks only go around the words spoken aloud, never around the thoughts. If it takes quotation marks, it means we said it out loud. If it doesn't have quotation marks, your character is thinking it. Okay. So people, anytime you research any of this, they always differentiate between British English and American English. Who do we have here? Mary, when you learnt to write quotation marks, did anyone differentiate at any point between single or double?
No, I tend to use double all the time.
Yeah, everyone always says British English, and I went to school in British English and I learned to use double. So it's always very interesting for me. The only rule with this is,
To be
yeah.
fair, I did learn Irish English, so maybe that was why.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know. We spoke to the English to the Brits this morning as well, and they also use double. So
double. Yeah.
yeah. The only thing I can tell you with this is to be consistent. Okay. If you use double throughout. If you use single throughout. You can also omit quotation marks entirely. Margaret Atwood, for example, likes to do that. Or in some literary stories, you can use the dash, okay, a little dash to denote dialogue. Okay. Just think very carefully about why you would want to do that. Okay. Um, what I also don't, just anyway, it doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want as long as you're consistent and it doesn't go directly against the submission guidelines of the publisher. And also, just when I say be consistent, if you alternate between double and single and you have to go and fix that in an 80,000 word manuscript, that is a lot of fixing to do. Okay. It's not fun. All right. So just be very, very aware of that. Cheryl, you had your hand up for a moment. Were you just checking out the buttons or do you have a question?
So I've seen where like a person is monologuing
Hmm?
and um they'll like speak one paragraph and then it'll be a single quotation at the bottom and then a double quotation in a new paragraph and they're still talking.
Mm.
What's that?
What is actually preferred, and I'm not sure about the single, but I would definitely, when you have a monologue, I'll show you an example now at the end, is you actually omit the second quotation mark, but I wouldn't use double and singles unless there's a specific style guide that calls for that. So you open, you don't close it, you open, you don't close it, you open, and then you close it at the end of the last paragraph. That's how you would punctuate a monologue. But I'll talk about that a little bit in a moment. Okay. Just be consistent, pick your poison, and stick to it. All right. That's the most important part. Um, Dialogue tags tell us who's speaking. Okay. This is clarity. This is what you want. Words like said, asked, whispered, and shouted. Okay. Um, they literally identify the speaker. That is why we have them and what they do for us. Um, we have a very basic pattern. I'm tired, she said. Okay. Note that the comma goes inside the quotation mark. So it literally goes quotation, words spoken aloud, comma, close quotation, she said. Notice after the comma, there is a lowercase s for she. All right. That is because this all forms one sentence. Okay, so it won't take a full stop. It's wrong. It's a grammatical error if you have a full stop and then a lowercase s, or if you have a comma and then an uppercase s. Okay, this is all one sentence. If you look at the next example, we should leave now, comma, David, capital letter. It's a proper noun, so it will automatically take a capital letter. Okay. What you want to do with this stuff. So this one is very typically, I'm tired, she said. You can also say, she said, I'm tired, or you can say, I'm tired, she said, I'm going to bed. All right. So you can put the tag in the middle, you can put the tag in the beginning, or you can put the tag at the end. We do want some variety when it gets to this stuff, okay? Because what you'll see happening is she said, she said, she said, she said, she said, she said. So we play with a little bit to give us just a bit of rhythm and variety. This is one of the reasons why we say read your dialogue aloud so that you can see the way it goes. If it sounds like a stuck record, she said, she said, she said, she said, she said, she said, we don't want that. Okay. We want our writing to slow down and speed up and to pause and to get faster again. That is what you want. And that's why we look at this variety. We play with the rhythm of the sentences. Okay. Um, if you have a question mark or a quotation mark, same thing goes. It goes inside the quotation marks in place of the comma, not including the comma, in place of the comma. And then the same rule applies lowercase, she asked, he shouted. Okay. What we try to avoid is saying things like question mark, she questioned, or exclamation mark, he exclaimed. Don't double state it. Even this ask, I would say, is there a different way to do it? Where are you going? She stood in the door to stop him. I would rather play with that than go with the asked or the questioned. Okay. That's very much just a personal preference. Um, what you can also do is this is where the confusion comes in, is when we use a full stop, is when it is an action beat as opposed to a dialogue tag. Okay, dialogue tag, she said, takes a comma. An action beat takes a full stop. Okay, so here you can see I'm cold, comma, she said. Said is the word that we're using that for. An action beat, I'm cold. She pulled the blanket tighter. So I'm cold. These are two different sentences. That's why we have a full stop. Okay. Do you know what is also confusing? Is when you do things like, I'm cold, she said, pulling the blanket tighter. That's where confusion also comes in. So I would automatically split the two. Now, remember we said we use said because said is the hero word, but it does get repetitive. Said all the time. So we alternate where the tag goes in the sentence, but you also alternate between dialogue tags, action beats, and thoughts. The action beat and the thought of the viewpoint character, that's important, not every character, the thoughts of the viewpoint character can also identify the speaker. I'm cold, she pulled the blanket tighter. Um, I'm cold. Will they ever close the windows? She wondered. Okay, those identify speakers as well. Okay, and then just pay very close attention. Action beats get the full stops, dialogue tags get the commas. Okay. And of course, when there's a full stop, it's followed by a capital letter. So just very quickly, examples here. Leave me alone, comma, he said. Leave me alone, full stop, he slammed the door. Leave me alone, he slammed the door. It won't happen like this because these are two separate sentences. Okay. Um, dialogue, interrupted speech or ellipses. Okay. So when you have a sentence that stops very abruptly, it will take an end dash. Okay. As we know, M dashes are a little bit, well, no, AI is problematic at the moment. M dashes are not problematic. AI is problematic. So it was very, very funny. Anyone who edits will appreciate this. Monica, I know you've looked at lots of copy before. Bella, who works with me, she does freelance copywriting for someone, and it's a client obviously who doesn't work in the writing world. And she gave him a piece of writing and he sent it back and says, but it's a little bit disappointing that you used AI. And she's like, what do you mean? I didn't use AI. He says, no, you have a dash here. And then she had a hyphen in a word that was hyphenated, but he insisted that it was a dash and therefore she used AI. So if we talk about things getting out of hand, it's completely out of hand at this point. Okay. So when your dialogue ends abruptly, like a screaming match or a car bomb or a door being slammed. It's an abrupt end to the speech, and then we use em dashes. Okay, it shows that the speech was cut off abruptly, like mid-sentence. An ellipses shows that the word, that the thoughts of the words were trailing off. Okay, so the character was drugged, the character was really drunk and passed out, the character faints, whatever that is, where the words fade away, or the character is so sad they can't speak anymore and they break down into tears, then you can use that. Okay, with all of these, if every single sentence is interrupted and abrupt, and if every single sentence trails off, it's not ideal. Okay, so we want to use these things, but don't overuse these things. Okay. Um, as this is another example of where the dialogue sits, where the tag sits in the middle, I don't think Maya says that is a good idea. Okay, so can you see that this is a comma and this is a comma and that is a lowercase because this all forms a one sentence. If we had to say, I don't think this is a good idea, Maya hesitated, stopping in the door, waiting for him to dunk. Okay, then those are two separate sentences again. All right. So just pay attention to where you split these. And again, this is where we read the work aloud because this actually sounds funny. I don't think Maya said that it's a good idea. I wouldn't put my tag there. Okay. I don't think that is a good idea. Maya said that's what I would say. Okay. But I'm finding examples for you. All right. So just pay attention to the capitalization. But if you have commas, it takes a lowercase. If you have a full stop, then it'll take a capital letter. Okay. This is Cheryl, what was Cheryl was asking earlier about the monologue. Okay, so this is just a very short example. So when you have a character, so what the monologue means is the character is speaking over several paragraphs. Okay, then you open your quotation mark and you finish the first paragraph. You do not close the quotation mark here. So Cheryl, this is not, I'm not familiar with the single quotation mark here. I was taught to omit it entirely. So you leave out the quotation mark here. Then you open the quotation mark again to show that it's the same speaker. And then it continues. And when the speaker is finished and they get to the end, that is where you use the second quotation and you close the quotation marks again. Okay. It shows that the same speaker is the one still speaking. But I'm going to argue that you can get away with a stronger piece of writing by interrupting this monologue. Even if it is one character speaking and you're in his viewpoint or her viewpoint, I would rather think, like, let's say this is a speech, for example. By nature, speech is a single speaker, they're standing and they're talking. Okay. Even though it is an uninterrupted piece of dialogue, we can still have things like, remember, dialogue includes your thoughts, the body language of the character, interacting with the setting. Let's say the character is struggling with the laser pointer, or they're gripping the sides of the podium, or they're shuffling their papers. These are all ways to break up really long pieces of dialogue, but still identify the speaker. Make sense? Okay. They are just nicer things to do because body language can be so much stronger. Is it really fun listening to someone speak for 10 or 20 minutes and it's just this like single droning thing carrying on there? Okay. Not everyone is a TED Talk speaker. So I would break it up with the body language of the character, the thoughts of the character. Like, why is it, where are my slides? I'm missing a slide. Oh crap, there's one whole slide gone here. Okay. What the character is thinking while they're speaking, what they're doing. So there are smarter things or smarter ways to do this. Okay. Um, Italics, I don't like having thoughts in italics. Okay. Um, by nature, a novel makes us spend a lot of time in a character's head. So if we have to put all the thoughts in italics, almost your entire book is going to be italicized. Okay. Italics to me is a better way to use for emphasis than it is to use thoughts. Okay. If you really have to emphasize something, go for it, or a thought that's very specific, go for it. But if you're going to end up italicizing all your thoughts, it's going to be too much. It's going to lose its efficacy. Okay. Sometimes in fantasy, they'll use the italics to show that the characters are speaking telepathically. So they'll have the words spoken aloud, they'll have the telepathy, and then they'll have words spoken aloud again. If you read a lot of fantasy, you will have seen that. Okay. So if it is clear, then you don't need to show us that it's in italics. Okay. I'm going to stop here because there's something else I want to show you. Let me just open the right document. Please be the one. Yeah, there we go. I typed this out in Microsoft, in manuscript formatting. Come on, share, let's go. While I was explaining what was going on. So I will share this with you guys in the education tab as well. So this is what manuscript formatting looks like in your manuscript, okay? As you can see, there's no white space between these paragraphs. When I'm speaking about white space, this is what I mean. I don't do that between paragraphs, okay? If you don't type in manuscript formatting, this is what tends to happen. Okay, your work looks like this. It looks like a business report, which is fine for school, but we don't want that. Okay, so we take out these spaces and we indent our stuff. And okay, so let's start at the top. Dialogue formatting starts with manuscript formatting. That means we use double line spacing. Some publishers will accept 1.5, which I've used here, but make sure to check the submission guidelines. For manuscript formatting, we indent paragraphs and we only put white space between scenes. White space, the kind you get when you hit return, indicates scene and chapter changes. See, no white space between paragraphs here. Okay, there's nothing in between. It follows or it flows. Each line of dialogue is also indented, she says. That means it does not sit on the margin, but a little way in. Can you see where the comma goes? Yes, the quotation marks. Now I'm back into the character's head again. It doesn't need to be italicized because it's the narrator and the character's telling us the story. This quotation mark goes around words spoken aloud and a comma sits inside to show that it is all one sentence. This goes for all quotation marks, commas, question marks, exclamation marks. Also, each new speaker starts on a new line. Can you see the white space that is created here? Okay, that is the white space that we want from dialogue. So how do we use action beats? The student asks. Now, this is a question. The question mark takes the place of a comma. It is all still one sentence, so take note of the lowercase, the lowercase. Well, an action beat is a separate sentence, so it takes a full stop, period. Mia pointed to the end of the sentence. Can you see that because the action beat identifies the speaker, I don't need to say Mia said pointing at the end of the sentence. I could omit the said in that case. The action beat is on the same line as the spoken words and we end the dialogue with a period. What about interrupted speech? The student asks. Sometimes speech trails off with an ellipsis. If it trails off, use an ellipsis, but if it stops abruptly like this, then you use an em dash. It shows that the speech was cut off. What about dialogue that is split by tags? Sometimes we need to break the dialogue with a tag. I'm not sure, the student says, if I understand this. Let me explain. Here the tag sits in the middle with the commas on either side, but note that the first comma sits inside and the second comma sits with the tag. The dialogue starts again with lowercase, so the I over here. If this was an action beat and I had a full stop, then this would be capital letter and that would be capital letter. When the speaker has a lot to say about a topic like dialogue and it goes over a few paragraphs, don't close the quotation mark after each paragraph. Can you see I omitted the quotation mark here? Only use a quotation mark at the beginning of each paragraph to indicate that it is the same speaker who is still talking, and then close it only in the very last paragraph like this.